Ignited Minds, Unleashing the Power Within India. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam. Chapter 1. The Dream and the Message. Dream, dream, dream. Dreams transform into thoughts, and thoughts result in action. On September 2001, I was on my way to Bokaro from Ranchi in Jharkhand when the helicopter carrying me crashed moments before landing. It hit the earth with a thud after its engine failed. All of us on board had a miraculous escape. Grateful to God but unfazed by the incident, I went ahead with my scheduled program of addressing students in Bokaro. At night, however, a panel of doctors persuaded me to take a tranquilizer to alleviate my perceived shock. The drug made me sleep hours ahead of my usual time, 1 a.m. I also failed to rise at my usual 6 a.m. and woke up only after 8 o'clock. It was, however, a disturbed sleep, and sometimes in the middle of it I fell to thinking why the human race, the best of all God's creation, has been so deeply divided by violence. I imagined a conversation between five people who together symbolize the finest attributes of the human mind and whom I admire deeply. Through their conversation, I sought an answer in this experience, much more intense and vivid than a dream. Though, for want of a better word, I shall term it that I saw myself in a desert with miles of sound all around. There was a full moon and the desert was bathed in its light. Five men, Mahatma Gandhi, Albert Einstein, Emperor Ashok, Abraham Lincoln, and Caliph Omar, stood in a circle in their clothes ruffled by the wind. I felt myself dwarfed standing next to the majestic Emperor Ashok. Ashok led two lives, one of a ruthless conqueror and the other as a compassionate ruler. The man I stood beside was the one who had just returned from conquest, but victory had been obtained at heavy cost. The Battle of Kaling claimed the lives of at least 300,000 people, and an equal number were wounded. I saw everyone looking at Ashok, who fell on his knees and removed his armor and crown. His face was pale, reflecting the death surrounding him. He looked at the sky. He saw the bright, cool moon shining, God's grace pouring down on earth. And he looked down at the horror he had created, making blood flow everywhere. In that moment of beauty and horror, the silver moonlight and the suffering and pain on the ground, when nature itself seemed to speak out against what he had brought, Ahimsa Dharma was born. Emperor Ashok embraced God's command to propagate love for human beings through the doctrine. As I stood by, I wondered why the Kaling War was, why the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi and of Abraham Lincoln, or many other like them, as God Almighty faltered in His creation. Is the destruction of mankind essential for a second creation? In that blissful silence, the Mahatma Gandhi spoke. Friends, the divine message we are hearing in this message of creation. Since we all belong to planet Earth, we may give a message to mankind how people of different races, religions, and languages can live peacefully and prosperously together. God Almighty has blessed us all with something unique that we passed on to mankind through our deeds and efforts. Is that working? Is there any divine message or doctrine? Divine beauty should enter the human soul and happiness. blossom in the body and mind. Is it possible? Ashoka said, friends, there is one thing I have realized: there is no victory in causing suffering. Trump is a peaceful kingdom. Caliph Umar said, I learned after I entered Jerusalem that all men are equal. There is no point in forcing others to follow your path. You will get only that which is ordained for you. God alone is sovereign. Caliph Umar never saw his position in terms of the special privileges that it carried. To him, government was a sacred trust, and he did his best not to betray that trust in any way. It was Einstein's turn. I would like to recall my friend Werner Heisenberg's view. In the West, we have built a large, beautiful ship. It has all the comforts in it. But one thing is missing: it has no compass and does not know where to go. Men like Tagore and Gandhi and their spiritual forebears found the compass. Why can this compass not be put in the human ship so that both can realize their purpose? Abraham Lincoln, the great American leader who had fought against slavery and whose life paralleled that of the Mahatma in certain perspectives, said at this point, there's one thing that I would like to say. Happiness comes from our family's prosperity at various levels. God's grace give bliss to human lives. Happiness and bliss are two important components of a godly life on earth. Perhaps there is so much conflict between peoples and the nations because in our pursuit of prosperity and power, we have lost sight of ethical values. We must ask ourselves, what is the role of human consciousness? Does it have a part in political thinking, scientific thinking, and theological thinking? Is spirituality acceptable in the business of life? Mahatma Gandhi recalled sage Ashtavakra, and who propounded, O my son, you are the very consciousness within which arises this phenomenal universe that is not separate from what you are. How can there be a question of anything being acceptable or unacceptable? Let the business of life be peace and prosperity and not exploitation and conflict. This is our message to the planet. Everything that we do, any doctrine that we espouse, should be for the good of humankind. The next morning, I kept sitting for some time drinking my tea and pondering about this strange dream. What if the helicopter had lost power at some more height, just a few hours from my own mishap? A plane carrying a promising leader and a team of young and talented journalists had crashed, killing all. I had been lucky to survive, and now there was a night's experience that seemed to hold a message for me. What should I do? I looked out of the window. The sun was well up in the sky and there was a soothing breeze. I have always lived in close touch with the nature and have always found in it a friend. Living without reservation, like the mango tree, people throw stones at it, break off its branches, but it still offers its shade to the weary traveler and its fruit to the hungry. Whether it was the sea at the Rameshwaram, Thumba and Chandipur, the desert at Pokhran, or the gigantic shoulders in Hyderabad, nature has always made its presence felt wherever I have worked. It has helped to remind me of the divine force that pervades all of creation. I kept on pondering over my dreams, and yet the history of the world shows the forces of good struggling hard to make life better for mankind, while the human race is also so a terrible capacity of destruction. Thus we have Gandhi and other great saints and teachers who lay down the precepts for a happy and virtuous life on the one hand, and on the other the death of millions in the Second World War, and dropping of atomic bombs that destroyed entire city. Thousands of people have died in Bosnia conflict. The Israel-Palestine conflict continues to take lives, and on September 2001, terrorists used new tactic to take lives when they struck at the World Trade Center in New York. At home, in the Bhopal gas tragedy, 30,000 people died as a result of carelessness of multinational company, and thousands more have died in the Kashmir Valley violence. On 13 December 2001, when the leaders of India were in parliament, an attempt was made by the terrorists to paralyze the country. Where will it all stop? Are we doomed to destroy ourselves? No, we have to find an everlasting solution. I recall a poem I wrote a few years ago, The Tree of Life. You, the human race, are the best of my creations. You will live and give till you are united. In happiness and pain, my bliss will be born in you. Love is a continuum. That is the mission of humanity. You will see every day in the life tree. You learn and learn, my best of creations. 5 great human beings I saw in my dreams lived at different times. In the modern world, there are few examples of human beings who embody the quality that come from realizing the nature of the mind. Once a child asked me if I had read the Mahabharata, and if so, who my favorite character in it was. The multifaceted character in the epic represent almost every aspect of human nature, good as well as bad. I told the child that I have particularly attracted to the character of Vidur, who showed grit against the wrongdoings of authority and had the courage to defer when everyone else chose to surrender before the tyranny of Adharma. Today it is hard for us to find one true Vidur among our leaders. It is hard for us to imagine such an ignited being, and even harder for us to aim for such enlightenment. More discouraging still is the quality of public life today. The low level of discourse and the presence of so much ego, anger, greed, jealousy, spite, cruelty, lust, fear, anxiety, and turmoil. I felt a new determination dawning inside me. In this, my most important decision, I decided to help discover the nature of India's true self in its children, my own work, and indeed I as a person were relegated to the background. My scientific career, my teams, my awards, all this became secondary. I wanted instead to be a part of the eternal intelligence that is India. I hope to transcend myself and discover the inner higher self that is in us through my interaction with joyous children. A man is said to pass through different stages in life. Dr. Wayne W. Dyer, in his book Manifest Your Destiny, makes an interesting characterization of them: an athlete stage, warrior stage, state person stage, and spirit stage. It occurred to me that nations too make a similar transition, and in extending this analogy to them, I have termed the last 2 stages Big Brother and self-realization stages respectively. These stages do not follow in sequence necessarily. They can be coexistent with one aspect dominant.